I'm Piers Ridyard, CEO of the Decentralized Finance Protocol, Radix, a public ledger entirely focused on bringing DeFi to the mainstream. This is our podcast, the DeFi Download, a show about decentralized finance and all things crypto, where we dive into the details of the projects, assets, and services that are powering the DeFi revolution. Today, I'm joined by Spencer, product manager of DAOhaus. DAOhaus is a no-code platform for launching and running DAOs owned and operated by the community. Spencer, thank you so much for coming on the show.
Awesome. Thanks, Piers. Really great to be here. I'm excited to talk about DAOs and DAOhaus.
So let's start with a simple question that will, I'm sure you'll nail in 2 minutes, and then we'll move on. What is a DAO and why does it matter?
I think actually it's much easier to talk about why does it matter than what is a DAO. There's lots of different opinions and thoughts and perspectives and experiments on the question of what is a DAO. It's all kind of this boiling hot, amazing mess right now. I have some specific opinions, but they don't necessarily reflect everybody else's perspective. But maybe we'll come back to that in a sec. The reason that DAOs are important is that they represent a fundamental shift in the way that humans organize and coordinate. And as some people in the space, especially within the Gitcoin ecosystem, like to say, it's all coordination, and it always has been. And so DAOs are, at least to me, kind of a leap forward in our ability to coordinate with each other in an equitable fashion. I suspect that many different organizations that exist today, and many that don't yet exist, will come to be organized as DAOs, and I think that will be for a tremendous net positive to society and humanity.
Okay, so a really important thing that's a new invention for human coordination, but what is it?
Yeah, so so DAO stands for Decentralized Autonomous Organization. Yeah. I don't necessarily think getting into the nitty-gritty of all of those words is super crucial. I think the concept of what is a DAO has expanded a little bit from the initial use of that term. But key to that is decentralized, certainly, where, and really important, is the distribution of power over what a group of people, what an organization, what a community can do, and the assets that it controls and the actions that it can take. DAOs, in a DAO, that power is distributed across, at least to some degree, across all of the members of that organization or that community or that DAO, contrasted with a traditional company or even nonprofit, where you have kind of this more top-down structure where 1, 2, maybe 3 or 4 people at the very top have kind of exclusive control over everything. That is very different from DAOs. Yeah.
So, what makes it different now to what it was because things like that have existed before, right? So collectives and partnerships and sort of unincorporated corporations and sort of things that don't have explicit rules. They are just essentially a loose construct, either mental or legal, that allows people to go give a sense of thisness and a sense of purpose to a body of people, right? And then you start to formalize it. You can formalize it more or less. But what makes this? How does blockchain and distributed ledger technology and public ledger technology interact with the concept of this new form of organization and management?
Yeah, I think that's a crucial question, and one we're still figuring out as a whole ecosystem how to exactly answer. My take on it, though, is that smart contracts and blockchains allow actions and decisions that used to be only able to be made or executed by one or a small handful of people to be made and executed collectively. So if we look at a more traditional company, they might have a bank account, and only certain people within that company are able to access and control the assets within that bank account. Even if that company is set up as a cooperative, culturally they're like pretty distributed, but there's going to be some set of people that have been delegated to control the funds or the assets that cooperative owns, and there's some degree of trust that is placed on those one or two individuals. Without smart contract, there's always going to be some level of trust and or some degree of outside regulation and legal framework relied upon to actually ensure that the execution of decisions that are made as a group reflects the decisions that are made the actual decisions made as a group. And smart contracts completely change that. You can create any number of different kinds of smart contracts that allow the actual execution of a decision to only be made to be tightly coupled with the decision itself. So if you kind of look at the way that compound governance works, everybody who is voting is actually kind of putting their votes into the system, and only when the number of votes in the system for yes exceeds the number of votes in the system for no, and I guess they've passed quorum, only then does the actual decision get executed. There's no intermediary other than the contract itself. And that is a fundamental shift because we can do a ton of different things that we've never really been able to do before, both with a smaller group of people where they can really truly share in control of what's happening, as well as with a much larger group of people, which is probably that might be, I think both are really important, but we've definitely never seen a huge scale organization making decisions fundamentally collectively before.
I mean, you could argue that's what countries do, right? A democracy is made up of the collective representations of the people of the country. It gets changed. The entire democracy can be turned over by the votes of the people of the country, and it then has a very complicated set of rules and how it operates. Yeah. But I often think that there are lots of it's interesting to see there's lots of analogies because we went from in the way in which we as a human society learn to organize. We started this process initially from small communities, family, nuclear family plus sort of immediate family, and there was rules of hierarchy that sort of emerged as a result of seniority and strength. And then you went to sort of villages where it was based on again, you sort of informal power rather than formal power, and then you went up a level and you started to need to formalize power. Sometimes that created tyrants, and so there was rules put in place to fight against tyrants, and eventually we get to things like representative democracy or even direct democracy. How is this journey different? Is this journey different? Is this a reinvention of things that we've already seen, or is there something fundamentally different about what's happening this time around, and why the control of capital makes any difference to that?
I think the difference this time around comes down to the ease with which that such a system can be deemed legitimate by its members. We have let's say in various democracies around the world, all of them have had to put in an absolutely massive amount of work to basically convince their citizens, their residents, that the structures around them are legitimate. And I think the reason that's the case is because all of those structures rely on some handful of individuals that actually have their finger on the actual button to do the actual thing. Even if we are all able to vote, our votes only count if the people that are actually pressing the button listen to the way we voted. Mm-hmm. And we've never had a system until we have had blockchains and smart contracts. We've never had a system where everybody who's voting all collectively has their finger on the button. All can collectively execute the action together. So I guess another way to say it is we've never had a system where all the members who are involved in the thing each have actual direct non-custodial control over the thing. Even in democracies, the government custodies so much from us, or on our behalf. They custody like our votes essentially for us, and so there, you have to put up all this like legitimacy scaffolding to make that work. With a DAO, you don't really need any of that scaffolding because the actual foundation of it is in the smart contracts, and that confers almost by default legitimacy because everybody is actually involved in the non-custodial control over the thing.
Well, you're moving. It's not that you don't have to establish it. You're just moving it to a different place.
That's fair.
You now have to think about the way in which you set up the rules of the system, because the system is auto-enforcing once those rules are set up, right? So if you create a bad system design, you'll still end up in a bad situation at the end of it.
Agreed. Yeah.
So first of all, like, what do you think DAOs are really good for? And then secondly, what do you think DAOs are problematic for, if there is anything?
I think DAOs are really good at two extremes and certainly things in the middle, but I've been thinking about this as two extremes. And DAOs are really good at so like personally, I consider things like Bitcoin and Ethereum DAOs themselves. At least of some form. And so I'm not
disagreeing with you. I'm just turning over in my head.
And the reason I think that is because they are kind of protocols that have set rules and those rules create incentives for individual humans to interact with them and use them in such a way that advances the goals or the kind of the expansion of those systems. So that's kind of one extreme. There's like very, very mechanistic kind of DAO, where the point is to create a system where individuals can respond to private incentives, and by doing so, kind of this organism emerges.
Emergent synchronous behavior that ends up
exactly.
creating something of value as a result, right?
And I think that is probably what when people back in 2013, 2014 or whatever, probably including Vitalik, were trying to define or like we're coming up with the idea of a DAO. That's probably more what they were thinking about. But then the other extreme is a structure that creates a space for an explicit space for humans to interact with each other as a community. And there's less definition of the explicit goals of that structure and more of a like, here is a place, here's a space where you humans can come together and create something or do something or kind of live your values in the way that you want, without having to necessarily initially fully trust each other. So you in that way you get a lot of like serendipitous kind of activity and creation and exploration of new ideas. Over time, maybe that kind of DAO can kind of codify itself, the rules that it develops, and ossify into more of a mechanistic DAO. But I do think, and so in that sense, there are DAOs that are kind of a combination of both. But I think DAOs are really good at kind of both sides of that extreme. Kind of creating something really interesting that doesn't require humans to really interact with each other in a way that's not mediated by the protocol or the DAO itself. And then on the other side, creating a space for people to come together and just seeing what happens based on that.
Interesting. Okay. And I suppose the extra, and like for those people who are sort of newer to the concept of publicly centralized ledgers and things like that, the power, if there is any power that's vested in this technology, is explicitly the power of its treasury. Like ultimately, that's its sort of ultimate power, right? Because it doesn't bind people, but it can create incentives around action. So you can't force a person to do something if they don't want to do it, but you can give people incentives to act according to their best interests. Yeah. Or you can pay people to do actions on behalf of the collective. And it's that ability to either pay people to do things on behalf of the collective or bind people to their self-interest, their rational self-interest, through a set of incentives that is the power. So the power is the money of the organization, and the fact that there isn't one person that controls the money. It's the rules of the organization that controls the money directly.
Yeah, I think that's very well said. I will add one thing to that, which is that DAOs have, part of the power of DAOs is that they can collectively control a set of smart contracts. They can deploy new ones that they control. They can upgrade and modify existing ones, and thereby kind of collectively change their own rules or the rules of some other protocol that they've been set up to manage.
Right. So a governance DAO changing the number of assets that are allowed in compounds, adding a new asset type in compound, for example. Right. Okay.
Yeah.
So let's talk about DAOhaus itself then. So what does a no-code platform for launching and running DAOs mean, and who should care about that?
So when DAOhaus first started, DAOs, so the DAO had happened, I don't know, 2-3 years before.
For those who don't know, please do tell the story of the DAO, because it's a great story.
Yeah, so I wasn't fully around within the crypto ecosystem at that time, so this story is certainly going to be eighth hand or whatever. Right. But the DAO was a set of smart contracts that got deployed. I think it was in 2016, and the goal was to create a way for people to collectively invest in new projects. Right. And it was this incredibly popular and powerful idea, and tons of people within the Ethereum ecosystem just pushed a bunch of their ETH into that system. And there was all this excitement, and it felt amazing. So I've heard
$120 million.
And it was 15% of all ETH, I think, at the time is the number I've heard, which is just an insane. Thinking about that now is just an insane amount. But the problem was there was a bug in the contract that allowed an attacker to effectively start draining what would have been all of the funds, and that led to
that still people get wrong. The recursion bug that caused the DAO.
The reentrancy,
it just continuously causes problems in Solidity.
It's a very sneaky one because it can happen in different ways. Yeah. So that caused basically an existential crisis within the Ethereum ecosystem, and ultimately that led to a fork, a chain split, and that's how we got Ethereum Classic. Ethereum itself, the one that is more well known and highly valued today, basically undid the draining of the funds, returned the funds to return the ETH to the people that had deposited, and kind of moved on from there. But that, the sort of the secondary effect of that is it created a DAO winter. DAOs went from this really exciting thing to we can't do this, or we all have PTSD from this, and so we're not going to kind of try again. Yep. And that kind of persisted until Aragon started doing some things, but then at least in my understanding, really kicked off when the Moloch DAO was summoned, and that was very, very simple.
Is that the official term? You summon a DAO. You don't create a DAO. You summon a DAO.
For that, so Moloch DAOs come with all this kind of memery associated with them. Moloch itself, kind of the god of human discoordination, I guess is one way to put it. And this kind of demonic imagery came along with that. So summon is sort of the word that we use to talk about summoning a Moloch DAO. I like it quite a bit. It sort of evokes this idea that it exists in some way, but we're just bringing it over to a usable place. When the Moloch DAO, the original Moloch DAO, was summoned, that kind of kicked off what I think became a Cambrian explosion of other DAOs, some forks of Moloch DAO itself. So using what we can call the Moloch DAO framework, others kind of going off of the idea that what is really great is to create this kind of simple structure that allows people to add to it over time. And then we had the compound governance launch, and that I think kicked off, well, all of DeFi summer in, what was it, 2019? I think it was 2019 or 2020. I don't know.
2020 was DeFi summer.
Oh,
2020 was DeFi summer, but like 2019
all
like
goes
DeFi,
so fast.
Yeah. Like for me, the real start of DeFi summer was actually Maker DAI, the DAI savings rate. And the DAI savings rate was what people started. They started to be like, oh my god, this is a savings product that does better interest rate than a bank. And so then all of these things started to be built around this DAI savings rate. And then there was the Black Tuesday or what happened, and the DAI savings rate died and has never been reintroduced. But that was like the idea of people going, oh no, there's more capital interest here than we thought. And then sort of the DeFi summer came soon after that.
Yeah. And with DeFi summer came all of the like DeFi tokens and retroactive airdrops. I guess that started with Uniswap and all of this stuff. So at that point, or I guess, around that time, so the Moloch DAO had launched, I think or was summoned in 2019. And then a handful of new ones were summoned over the course of that year. And at that point, summoning a new one involved deploying smart contracts from probably some command line interface, and then needing to interact with the contract via a smart or a command line interface, or maybe Etherscan or something, all of which involved or required a decent amount of knowledge of code and the way the contracts were working, et cetera, et cetera. So what DAOhaus was originally created to, and part of it was called Pokemol at the time for Pocket Moloch DAO, like an easy UX to use and interact with a Moloch DAO. The whole point of it at that time was to make a way for anybody with just a familiar looking web or mobile UI to use a Moloch DAO. DAOhaus was kind of the second part, and now how DAOhaus has sort of, the DAOhaus brand, I guess, has sort of subsumed the Pokemol brand. Pokemol is on ice for now, but the concepts
DAOhaus,
live.
by the way, is a fantastic name. Like, I'm a massive DAOhaus design movement fan, and like DAOhaus, I was just like, yes.
Yeah, the house part also creates a lot of opportunities for memes and puns and stuff. I think the phase we're in now, we're calling DAOhaus the second story. So yeah, it's pretty fun. But anyways, so DAOhaus was kind of created to help summon new Moloch DAOs, and then what was Pokemol was the way to use those Moloch DAOs that were summoned.
And so, what have people been using Moloch DAOs for? Like, why would I want to summon a Moloch DAO? Why would I want to summon a DAOhaus DAO? As in,
so there's a handful of. Go ahead.
No, it's just a sort of like, for me, the crux of it is a little bit like, just to dive into it a bit more, is, I can if I'm a developer and I'm building a smart contract, I'm a developer and I'm building a smart contract. And if I have an application that I want to like control, why can't I just, use an existing framework? Why do I need a no code way of creating things? And like, that's not me like trying to be like, that sounds useless for the audience. It's just trying to understand the overlap between people who want to, and I think you've touched on it already, which is like, there's two forms. There's the mechanical bit, and then there's the social, the human coordination bit, where you may just want to start coordinating before something even exists, and that's the way of starting. So, yeah.
Yeah. So Moloch DAOs and the type of DAOs that DAOhaus is primarily oriented around and wanting to support are more of those kind of humanistic or community centric DAOs. So because Moloch DAOs are this very thin foundation that is very unopinionated about what people are going to do on top of that foundation, or what the people in that DAO are going to do, and that is really up to the people in the DAO. There are a handful of different use cases that we've seen be the most common. One of them is kind of the original purpose of the original Moloch DAO was as a grants giving organization. You can put your money into the DAO, and then collectively with the other members of the DAO, you can decide who to give that money away to. The power of that, and the reason that has been a really excellent use case for DAOhaus DAOs is the rage quit aspect of the Moloch DAO framework. And to me, rage quit is a beautiful, beautiful thing. It's got a funny name, but really it just means economic exit rights. So right. whatever you put into the DAO, and like the shares that you get back, your shares represent kind of a proportional voting power as well as proportional exit rights over the assets that the DAO controls. Right. So even if 50% of the funds have been spent or donated or granted by the DAO before, I still have a proportional right to leave with the assets, like the proportional assets that are in the DAO. So it creates a lot of protections for the individual, especially for individuals that have minority perspectives and opinions in the DAO, while maintaining the ability for the collective to do things together. Right. So this is a really amazing mix between kind of individualism and collectivism that I think is really powerful, and I think still underrated.
It's interesting because that's exactly the problem that killed the DAO, right? The re-entrancy issue was exactly around this concept of economic exit. And it's funny you see, and like that. I'm not saying that the idea is not a great idea. It is a great idea. It's just it's funny how history repeats it. Like the ideas were good, and then they created this, as you say, this winter, DAO winter. And I think there was because I was actually involved in the DAO. I knew Stefan Tool from the Ethereum meetups, and put money into the DAO and was on the chats when it was all going off. And the post DAO winter was, you said something really interesting, which was that you said lots of interesting things, but this concept of code is law was really what people thought before the DAO hack happened. And even though real life is more nuanced, the thing about ideas that makes them sticky is this simplistic narrative you can have to them. And if code is law, and I can create an organizational structure for which those rules are always enforced, then it gives me a nice certainty that I know what the rules of the game are and how it operates. And then the fork of Ethereum changed that concept as well. And so I think there was it wasn't just a rending asunder of the ability to actually implement from a code point of view, but there was a philosophical shift or breaking of a philosophical narrative. Before Ethereum's original branding slogan was build unstoppable applications, and someone was well, the application was stopped. And so it's really interesting that idea of economic exit has come back around as a really important idea of minority interest being able to remove themselves from the thing as well. Yeah, for sure. Okay, so from the point of view of what's happening now, I know that you've got a few features that have recently come out. One of them is called Safe Minion. Can you tell me a bit about Safe Minion? What's Safe Minion?
Yeah. So one of the properties of Moloch DAOs or DAOhaus DAOs is that by themselves they can't really interact with other smart contracts or other protocols on the blockchain. So at some time ago, this concept is not super new, but we created together with a couple other organizations a new type of contract called a minion. Was minion being like a helper.
Right.
It's basically a DAO's minion helps the DAO and enables it to interact with other smart contracts. It can also act as kind of a separate vault that is outside the purview of rage quit. So if the DAO wants to hold funds that are purely the collective and not able to be exited with by any of the members, they can do that within a minion as well. The minions have gone through a series of iterations, and we've added a number of features over time. But the newest version is what we're calling the Safe Minion, and it's called the Safe Minion because it integrates with and uses Gnosis Safe's newest kind of evolution, which is called Zodiac. And Zodiac, I'll let Gnosis talk more about what Zodiac is at some point. But Zodiac is basically an interface that enables any contract to control a Gnosis safe with some modifications and some modifiers and some other things. Gnosis safe is traditionally thought of as a multi-sig, but it can also be just like a vault or almost like an account. So what we can do with the safe minion is the minion is actually just middleware between the DAO and the safe. And so the reason we like to use the safe is because it's extremely robust, has been tested by many audits and by who knows how much money in safes over the years. So we feel really good about keeping assets in the safe. But then we can also control those assets by the DAO via this minion. The other really nice thing is that you can via Zodiac you can change ownership over the assets to another DAO. So a DAO could almost sell an entire safe and everything in the safe to another DAO. We have no idea what people are going to use that for, but it's an interesting primitive that kind of reflects or is a good example of the kind of interoperability and portability that we're trying to create with what we're integrating with.
DAOception.
Yeah, totally. I mean, DAO composability is a huge concept that is going to be really interesting over the next coming years. Right. Another thing that the Safe Minion can do, which we're really excited about, is it creates a lot of flexibility for how DAOs make decisions. So in a Moloch DAO, in a regular Moloch DAO, just like the core of it, you don't need a quorum. And that is for two reasons. One, because rage quit protects minority members. So if they don't like the outcome of a decision or of a proposal, they can always leave before that proposal gets executed with their share of the funds. But that means you have to have a set time for every proposal. So there's a voting period during which the members can vote. And then there's a grace period during which people who are upset about the result of the proposal could rage quit if they so desire. So that makes decisions necessarily slow. You can set up those proposal periods however you want when you create your DAO, but typically they might be from 1 to 7 to maybe up to 14 days, depending on the size of the DAO and how much funds are in the DAO. What the Safe Minion allows you to do is bypass that. So if the members of the DAO agree that some funds can leave the DAO treasury and move into the Safe Minion vault, then those funds can be spent and used to interact with other smart contracts via a quorum-based system. So in theory, you could execute those transactions very, very quickly. So if you were doing stuff in DeFi and you needed to move quickly, that would be the way to do it.
Very interesting. Very interesting. And then there's Boost Marketplace and Services Marketplace. I assume this is sort of like ways in which you're like other DAOs can help each other or communities can be helpful to each other, cross DAO support. Yeah.
So let me hit the first one first. And right. I apologize. My headset is telling me battery low, so hopefully it'll hang on here. So the first one is the Boost Marketplace. Boosts are what we are calling, we could have also called them like plugins or add-ons or apps or something like that. And that is really fundamentally where DAOhaus is going in the future, is to be a place to be kind of a home for your DAO where you can bring in all these other different tools and features and functionality that that you might need as a DAO to make yourself better and do what you want to do. We don't want to be kind of this monolithic, really anything. We want to enable lots of other people to create boosts and add-ins and other things for other DAOs. So the marketplace is kind of the majority of the boosts that are there so far are ones that we have developed. But where we want to go, and where we're starting to go, is opening that up to third-party developers or other DAOs or other people to create boosts and offer them, including potentially to make some revenue or some income via our marketplace.
So an example of a boost might be a quadratic voting module, or would be something
potentially
like more radical.
So a lot of boosts are going to be centered around this concept of a minion, where it's sort of this helper contract.
Right.
Another example of a boost is a snapshot voting boost. So if your DAO has a token and you want to kind of gauge, like do a temperature check of it for all of the token holders, you can do that. Or if you want to just have a very quick signaling decision that doesn't need to move any funds, the members of the DAO can vote for free with Snapshot rather than going through the whole proposal process with on-chain voting and everything. Oh, I guess another one would be that is in the works right now is like a treasury management or almost like accounting kind of boost to give you a better view of all the assets and the history of your transactions within the DAO. So lots of different things can be created, and we're starting to piece together almost what we could call like an API or an SDK for developers to use. It'll take some time for us to get that where we want it to be, but that's the direction where we're going. So developers can come in and just hopefully quickly, create some new functionality, enable other DAOs to use that, and then ultimately get paid for that as well. And what we ideally want to create is an entire economy of these kind of things, where that economy is owned and controlled by the community, not by any kind of centralized company.
Very interesting. And I suppose the last thing to ask you about is, we've talked a lot about governance and funds and stuff like that, but like, what about NFTs? Where like this is the thing that everyone seems to be getting excited about at the moment. What is your strategy for NFTs?
Yeah, so NFTs are obviously huge.
Right.
I think they're only going to get bigger in lots of different directions. We have been experimenting with different ways that DAOs can use NFTs in lots of different ways. So one way is a DAO that is specifically set up to buy NFTs. There's lots of examples of this across the ecosystem using different frameworks. One of the advantages of using a Moloch DAO for something like this is that you can choose to the DAO can hold the NFT as a non-fungible item, and at some later point can choose to either sell it, and then the funds can be split to the members proportionally based on their shares, or they can choose to fractionalize it, and then the fungible token version or the fractional version can be split amongst the members as well. So there's a lot of optionality over when and how to handle NFTs.
I can own a little piece of a beeple.
Yeah, exactly. Another example is a DAO of NFT creators.
Right.
So kind of a group of artists or creators coming together to almost like a guild, and either maybe they're working together or they're just kind of spreading risk across their group or among each other. And then an artist collective.
It literally is an artist collective.
Yeah. Guilds are huge, are a really great use case for Moloch DAOs and DAOhaus DAOs. There's a bunch of them that we've seen pop up recently, which is really cool. And the third thing with NFTs is this idea of tributing an NFT. So instead of putting in DAI or ETH to join the DAO and have those funds be collectively managed, you could tribute an NFT to do that. And we're experimenting with different ways to make that possible, or different ways to use that kind of basic ingredient.
That's really cool. That's really cool. I mean, Spencer, it's been such a pleasure talking with you. If people want to find out more about DAOhaus, where do they go and how do they get started?
Yeah, so the best place to go is DAOhaus.club. That's our main landing page website. There will be links from there to the app, which is app.DAOhaus.club, where you can see all of the existing DAOs and kind of explore what's going on there, or summon one yourself, or join another one.
Not to confuse people, that is DAOhaus.
Yes.
.club. HAUS, the Germanic way of saying house?
I guess so, yeah. I think that's right. And then there are also links from that site to our Discord, which is a great place to get involved. Come ask us questions about how to create a DAO, how to manage a DAO. We have a ton of experts in our community about all things DAO. Also, DAOhaus itself we are organized as a DAO, so we would love to have more contributors. We have a very open door policy in that sense. So Discord is the place to come to if you're interested in contributing to build out the kind of things that we're working on. We need all kinds of contributors, developers, marketing people, community people, designers, writers, speakers, and everything, really. All of it is needed. So big, giant welcome sign on the front of our Discord for anybody who wants to help out.
That's awesome. That's really awesome. Spencer, thank you so much. Looking forward to speaking to you guys again soon.
Yeah, thanks, Piers. This has been really fun. I could talk about DAOs all day.
Awesome. Thank you.